Test of Study Hall. Today we're going to do SAT Writing Pronoun Errors. This is studyhall.test.com. We do these every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm the real Tom Rose. I'm one of the co-founders of Testive. I'm a professional teacher for 12 years, and I'm also a professional writer. So today I'm going to be talking to you about pronouns, and those are something that writers use all the time to get their message across. So a little bit about pronouns. They represent 12.5% of all writing questions. So they're about linearly proportional to what they should represent if all writing errors were evenly spaced. There's about 7 types of writing errors. So if you divide that into 100, 12.5% is about the representative portion. So pronouns are neither super common nor super rare. They're about as common as you expect. And interestingly, pronouns add absolutely no meaning to sentences. They only affect the sentence's aesthetics. We'll be coming back to this in a bit. How do you get better at pronouns? Here's the short of it. Step 1, spot the slippery 6. These are 6 super slippery pronouns that you definitely want to keep track of. We'll go over them later. 2, make sure that you find the referent. The referent is the noun the pronoun refers back to. And 3, evaluate for NAC. NAC stands for number, ambiguity, and case. Those are the 3 commonly misused components of pronouns. And we're going to be coming back to all of these issues in just one moment. So, the referent. A pronoun always refers back to a noun. And the noun that it refers back to is what we call the referent. So, for example, David hates balls because they are round. Consider that sentence there. So what in that sentence is a pronoun? Yes, Jen and Jasmine. So they is the pronoun here. Right? And what is a pronoun's job? A pronoun's job is to stand in for another noun, and that noun is what we're going to call the referent. So what is they standing in for? Yeah, here they is standing in for the word balls. So we're going to, this is supposed to be circling the word they. David hates balls because they are round. They is referring back to the word balls. Now, important to know that pronouns are not adding information to a sentence. For example, consider the difference in meaning between these 2 sentences. Lee loves nickels because they are flat. And Lee loves nickels because nickels are flat. Lee is a really exciting guy. Loves those nickels. Right? So there's no change in meaning between these 2 sentences. In fact, that's the entire point here, is that these sentences, from a communication standpoint, meaning-wise, are absolutely identical. They both convey the same message. One of them uses a pronoun instead of the word nickels twice. Right? So the second sentence uses the word nickels twice. This isn't redundant in the sense that it's a redundancy error. Because you don't know that he likes nickels because nickels are flat. He could like nickels because dimes are flat, which would be strange, but that could be Lee. So this nickels is the second nickels is not redundant. It does tell you something interesting. What it doesn't need to do, it doesn't need to literally use the same word again. The second using the same word again, that's redundant, right? You could use the pronoun they instead of the word nickels. We don't have to say that again. And the important thing here, and this is the whole point of pronouns, is pronouns make the sentence sound better. This is an aesthetic issue. Right? People prefer, did I say 2? People prefer to say the first sentence. So Lee loves nickels because they are flat, is the way that most people speak. There's something about the human ear which abhors repetition. So hearing that word nickels twice sounds bad to us. And so we prefer not to say it a second time. And so instead of saying it a second time, we swap in a pronoun, and the pronoun's entire job is just to be a placeholder and stand in for Nichols. It's like a variable in math. Right? So once you've defined it, you can just refer back to it over and over and over again, and you don't have to say it again. Now, let's talk about a couple of pronouns which in particular are especially bad. So these pronouns, we're going to call them the slippery six, are so commonly associated with errors that if you ever see one, you should immediately stop and check for errors. And they are it, its, they, them, their. And before you ask, no, that's not a typo. The word it is on here twice. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, it is both a subject and an object. We're going to come back to that later. But also, it is so important that it's worth having on here twice. So we'll put it on there a second time. So this is the slippery six. You definitely want to be able to read out the slippery six in an instant if you had to. So later, if I say, hey, what's the slippery six? You should be able to say it, its, they, them, their. That's how well you want to know those. I would memorize them just like I would memorize any other math formula or geometry concept. Now, let's talk about some of the common error types. So, the N in NAC is number agreement. What is wrong here? Sounds like you guys are having some trouble with connection. So what's wrong with this sentence? The apprentice was angry because they had no respect. Yeah, the they is a problem here. And what is the they referring back to? What's the referent? So the they is not unclear. And you'll see that in a moment when we pick out the referent. Yeah, the referent is the apprentice. This is supposed to be circling the word they. Let's draw that on here a little bit more clearly. So the word they here is the pronoun referring to apprentice, is the referent here. So it's not unclear, but what it is wrong in number. So what is the plurality of the apprentice? Yes, the apprentice is singular. And what's the plurality of they? Yeah, they is plural. So if we have a singular apprentice and we have plural they, that doesn't match up. So pronouns need to agree in number with their referent, right? You want to match singular pronouns with singular referents and plural pronouns with plural referents. So possible fix here, the apprentice was angry because she had no respect. She is singular, which matches apprentice singular. There are many possible fixes here, but that's just one. All right, I'll talk about ambiguity. My father slapped the ostrich wearing his pajamas. What in there is a pronoun? His, yes. Question in the chat window, what is the ambiguity? Good question. So who is the his referring back to? Yeah, his could be referring to ostrich, or it could be referring to father. Right, again, this is supposed to be circling his. It could be referring to the ostrich, and it could be referring to the father. So that's what we call ambiguous. So his could be referring to others, and since you don't know which one it's referring to, that is ambiguous. Is the father wearing pajamas, or is the ostrich wearing pajamas? And we don't know which is which. There was a great question in the chat window, which is, isn't the word his an adjective here? Let me just walk you guys through that thought process, which is really great. So his, right? You could say this. You could say, well, wait a minute. Isn't his modifying pajamas? Right? Isn't his just telling us more information about the pajamas? They're explaining whose pajamas they are. And the answer is yes. So his is a modifier for pajamas, and in that sense, it is functioning like an adjective. I would encourage you in this context to think of it as a modifier. It's a modifier for pajamas. And it is okay for pronouns to be modifiers. And in fact, possessive pronouns will always be modifiers. Right? You say like her blanket, his pajamas, our fork. Those will always be modifiers. And there's another question here, shouldn't there be a comma if there's a modifier? You don't always have to have a comma if there's a modifier. That's not a rule. You don't have to have them connected. Sounds like we should do modifiers next. I will do that next time. Let's stick with ambiguity for now. So the his could refer to either ostrich or father, so that's how we know that it's ambiguous. Now, when it comes to pronouns, ambiguity is bad, right? Since pronouns add no information, there's a risk, which is that the pronoun could actually destroy information by accident. That's what's happening here. We don't know who's wearing pajamas. So here's a possible fix. My father slapped an ostrich while wearing pajamas. Now it's clear that the father is wearing pajamas because the while helps connect it to the father. The important thing, though, for this fix is less the meaning, but note what happened to the pronoun. Where did the pronoun go in the fix? The pronoun is gone. There's no pronoun. We're not counting the word my. But there's no pronoun his. It's nowhere. And a lot of times, the way to fix a pronoun error is just to get rid of it. And you'll see that on the SAT too. If you deal with a pronoun error, it may be that the way to fix it is just to get rid of it. And the correct version, if you're doing improving sentences, for example, the correct version will simply not have a pronoun at all. And if you ever find yourself battling pronoun versus no pronoun in two answer choices, the one without a pronoun will typically win. In a fight, no pronoun beats pronoun. Third thing in knack is cases. Do not worry yourself with memorizing this whole chart. This is here to lay this out in a format. Most of these pronouns you've already seen, but what I want you to see is that different pronouns are used in different situations, even when they're referring to the same thing. So for example, if you take, the ones that are commonly mistaken, I put in bold. So this is one that's commonly mistaken, I and me. I, me, and mine, all those refer to the same thing. Those are all used to refer back to, the author. I, me. But we use different pronouns in different situations. So for example, in a sentence, if you're using a pronoun as a subject, you use to refer to first person singular, like the me, then you use the word I. You'd say, I am fast, right? The subject is I in that sentence. And since it's a subject, we use the pronoun I. But if you want to say, Dave hit me, right? Again, the me is referring to me, the author. But since it's an object, it's the person receiving the action. It's the thing receiving the hit. Then you use the pronoun me. Right, so you say, I am fast, but you would say, Dave hit me. You would also say, the ball is mine. Right, so if you want to indicate that something belongs to something else, you use possessive. Or you could say, my ball. Consequently, you wouldn't say, me am fast. You also wouldn't say, Dave hit I. Right? Even though those pronouns are referring to the same thing, because it's a different case, we use a different pronoun. And this is a very confusing feature of American English, one that really confuses people. Even native speakers have trouble between the ones that are in bold. For non-native speakers, it can be the whole chart is confusing. Notice down here, 6 of the words that are bold, basically the top row of third person singular and the only row for third person plural, those are the slippery 6. And now you can see why it's more clear that we have the word it in there twice. Because it is the pronoun that you use for third person singular for both the subject and the object situation, which makes it even more confusing. Because when you hear the word it, you don't know whether you're referring to a subject or an object. So that's part of the reason why it is so commonly used with errors, because we use the word it in all sorts of weird situations. So it's really common for the word it to be used as an error, but for you to not detect it. It is like the ninja pronoun. It slips by unseen and nobody can catch it. And you need to be super on the lookout for the word it. Right? So it is one of the deadly 6, or one of the slippery 6, but if we had to just pick a slippery one, it would be the word it. Now, a couple other things, who versus whom, I think are 2 of the most hated pronouns of all time in terms of figuring out how to use these. And here is the explanation for when to use which one. You use who when you're in a subject case, and you use whom when you're dealing with an object case. Right? So if you were going to ask your friend, who is coming to dinner, you use who, because that's a subject. Because the place where we have who, that's the person doing the action, coming to dinner. Who is coming to dinner, so you would say who. But if you wanted to ask, if somebody said, oh, I invited Barry, and you wanted to say, you invited whom? You would say whom with an M. Because that's an object. Now the way that I always do this, that I figure this out in my head, because it's actually very difficult to track down, is this a subject or an object case, for me anyway. What I try is I try switching the words he and him for who and whom. So when I want to say who is coming to dinner, I would try saying would I rather say he is coming to dinner or him is coming to dinner? And I'd say, okay, well, he is coming to dinner makes more sense. That must be a subject case. So that must be who is coming to dinner. You invited, would it make more sense to say you invited he or you invited him? It sounds better to say you invited him. So that's how I figure out, okay, that's an object case. So since him fits in there and I know that's an object case, the appropriate relative pronoun is whom with the M. That's a great one, Al. You asked the question, if the answer is he, she, it's who. If the answer is him, her, then it's whom. And you can also use, and I like that one too, Al, you're saying that you pay attention to the M's, right? He and who, neither one has an M. Him and whom, they have the M. Right? Him goes with whom, he goes with who. So Carolyn, this is different. So that's a possessive. You're saying whose, which is actually this case right over here, which is whose jacket. And you can say that. Whose jacket is that? But you wouldn't spell it W-H-O apostrophe S. You would spell it W-H-O-S-E. Whose jacket is that? Now the SAT doesn't test spelling, but yeah, you would say whose. A good rule to remember is that possessive pronouns never use apostrophes. Like look down this column right here, and you'll see that none of these possessives use an apostrophe, even though many of them end in S's. Yours, ours, hers, his, whose, its. But none of them have an apostrophe. And when you write, you wouldn't use an apostrophe either. Possessive pronouns do not have apostrophes. Yeah, so don't trouble yourself too much with this chart. What I wanted you to see on here is that there are different cases. They do exist. Later, when you're not sure, then I would look up the specific situation. So if you're having trouble with an I versus me, then think it through at that moment, or who versus whom. Because you probably don't need to memorize this whole chart. Most of it you use correctly already. It's just the cases specific to you that you're going to need to memorize. Ivy, both of those are correct. Were you asking which one of these is correct? Those are both correct. What you did was you just changed the sentence around so that you use the subject and the object case. So who owns this jacket is correct. And to whom does this jacket belong is also correct. Right? When you say to whom does this jacket belong, you've inverted the order. Usually the object comes later. So usually people says this jacket belongs to whom, and they would put the object at the end. But that's okay. You're allowed to switch the order. It makes it more confusing, but it's allowed. But Ivy, if you consider the alternative, so if you said, take your second sentence, you wouldn't say, to who does this jacket belong? And in the first case, you wouldn't say, whom owns this jacket? So you use it correctly both cases, and the other version would have been wrong in both cases. So okay, let's talk a little bit about pronoun process. Don't dig yourself too much into a who-whom hole. That's pretty rare. Pretty rare to come up on the test. Talk a little about pronoun process, and let's do some practice questions. Number one in pronoun process, first step, spot a pronoun, right? Remember the slippery six, it, it's, they, them, their. Make sure that when you see one of those, you stop and check for an error. Two, find the referent. As soon as you spot a pronoun and you believe it might be an error, you want to go find the referent. The referent is the key to whether it's used correctly or not. Three, evaluate the pronoun for knack. Does it agree in number with its referent? Is it ambiguous with its referent? And has it been used in the right case? Question in the chat window, can we download this PowerPoint? You will be able to soon. We haven't put these up online yet, but we will. You can download a written version of this at www.testive.com, and I'll post the link at the end of the session. Let's do some examples. When you come up with the answer, type it in the chat, but do not send it in, so no spoilers. Type it in, but don't send it in, so just wait, and we'll all send them in together. Okay, go ahead and send them in. Got, okay, and this is a good question here. So it's between D's and E's, right? So is this, and this is pronoun day, right? And it's one of the slippery six in this sentence is there. So you want to spot that slippery six. And then you want to go find, what's the next step? We've spotted it, step one. Next step, go find its referent. So what is there referring back to? Or I should say, what is the author's intent for it to refer back to? So whose most famous residence? Who are we talking to? It's not Derry Church. So when we say was originally known as Derry Church, was originally known as Derry Church is a big modifier for Hershey, Pennsylvania. We'll cover that next time when we talk about modifiers. So this its, here's a clue, right? Its name was changed. So it says Hershey was known as Derry Church, but its name was changed to honor one of, and then this should refer back to the same thing. So Hershey, Pennsylvania is the referent of its. And it's also the referent of there. So the pronoun, the referent doesn't change, so neither should the pronoun. Its name was changed to honor one of its most famous residents. Both of these cases were referring to Hershey, Pennsylvania, so we should use its. You happen to have a prototype in the sentence. You don't always have that, but it just, we happen to have the word its used in this sentence referring back to Hershey, Pennsylvania. So when they use another pronoun to refer back to Hershey again, you know it's its, even without knowing what pronoun it should be or how to use the right pronoun, because we have that prototype. But you guys do know how to figure out what pronoun to use because you can match it up in number. So there is what? Plural? But Hershey, Pennsylvania is singular. So we want a singular pronoun, which is its. This question is a very difficult question. I think this is a level 5 question. It's either a level 4 or a level 5, I forget. But this is a very difficult question, so many people are getting it wrong. This is a good example of if you know pronoun number agreement, then this becomes a pretty straightforward question. All right, let's look at another example. Again, when you get the answer, type it in the chat window, but don't send it. Okay, go ahead and send in your answers now. Okay, and so what do we have as splits here? We've got, and notice that the first two of these use the word she, and the second three use the word Sheila. So here's a choice. right? Do we either want she or do we want Sheila? So what is the pronoun here? Pronoun is she. So step 1, spot the pronoun. Step 2, what is the referent? What is she referring back to? Is it referring back to Sheila? Maybe. Or is it referring back to Lucy? We don't know. And that's part of the challenge here. Since you don't know, and since you can't tell structurally which one this is referring back to, that's considered ambiguous. Right? So the sentence is saying she noticed that the menu had changed. Well, who noticed? If you're the author, what information are you trying to convey? Are you trying to convey that Sheila noticed the menu changed? Or are you trying to convey that Lucy noticed that the menu had changed? And we can't tell. And the fact that we can't tell is a problem and an error. So you get rid of anything that has that ambiguous pronoun still in there. So get rid of anything that has she. Now to go forward from here, we need to use a different type of error, because you'll notice in C, D, and E, we don't have pronoun error. In fact, there's no pronoun. So we have to go to verb tense. We have has noticed, had noticed, and we've got noticed. This is a classic verb tense question. Right? We've got present perfect, past perfect, and simple past tense. Which one do we want here? We want simple past tense, which is what you've got in answer choice E. We'll come back to that on a future day when we talk about verb tense. The correct answer here is E. So again, use pronoun to get rid of A and B, and then use verb tense to get rid of C and D. And the correct verb tense here is simple past. And let's do one more. Take a look at this. When you get it, type your answer into the chat window, but don't send it. All right, go ahead and send in your answers. I see you guys are jumping the gun a little bit. Nobody wants to get left behind. And there's a lot of A's coming back. Also, this is further support for us doing modifiers next time. So it seems like the competition is between, would you rather get rid of the hearing, the unexpected loud noise, or would you rather get rid of the me? Well, which one of these is a pronoun, since we're doing pronoun day? Me is a pronoun. And what is the referent? Trick question. There isn't one. Yes, it's this, in the case of singular, or in the case of first person pronouns, the referent is the author. So you don't need to have a referent. This is kind of a special case, right? With first person pronouns, you don't have a referent. It's just me. And you can refer to me anytime. Right? Because I'm right here. That's who the me is referring to. It's me. We don't need to tee that up. You can just do it. And what case is this? Is the word me doing the action, or is the word me having the action done to it? It is doing the action. The subject here is me. So, well, it's actually Cindy, Leroy, and me. And the verb is were. Cindy, Leroy, and me were startled. Since it's a subject, we want what case of pronoun? What's the first person subject case for the author? It's I. You want the I. So you want to say Cindy, Leroy, and I were so startled that we almost jumped out of our seats. So the answer here is the letter B. So if you thought the opening phrase, hearing the unexpected loud noise, was wrong, that is a great example of a correctly used modifier that is not used in a way that people would ever speak. So this is used more in high-level writing. It's an opening modifier. Right? People don't usually speak this way, though, so it's pretty uncommon and it sounds weird. So that's why people tend to select this as wrong, although it's not wrong. It's perfectly acceptable. When we go over modifiers, you'll see why that's correct. For today, in terms of pronouns, this is the wrong pronoun case. It's a subject, so you want to use I. So the correct answer is B. A lot of letters there. Great work today, guys. That concludes the pronoun section. You can get further practice at www.tested.com. We have free questions and/or you can work with a 99 percentile scoring coach. If you would like, I'd like to acknowledge everybody that helped put this together. Miro Kazakov, Jackson, Havid, Noel, David, Pikachu, Chippendale, Lee, the chemist Akamondo, Shonak, the close-up Patel, Morella, Brazil, Crespi, David, Chubby Shorts, High Song, Charles, Kitten Smuggler Reese, Abby, the Saint Engelstead, Will, the Institute Eaton, and Meg Smiles Butler. And we also need to add Sophie, who doesn't have a nickname yet. Studyhall.tested.com runs every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you'd like a coach, you can try a free 30-minute session. You can sign up for that at scheduler.testive.com. We do about 15 minutes on where you stand and 15 minutes on how to approve. No cost to sign up for that. When is the next math tutorial coming up? I'm not sure, Mao. Write in to the request box and let me know what you'd like to hear, and we'll do it. Next week, we're going to do modifiers because I got so many requests for that already. But we might do math after that if everybody requests it. So get your friends, have them come out and tell them to request modifiers, to request math, and then that's what we'll do. And where is the request? Oh, here it is over here. Hiding. What do you mean by sentence types?